Hi everyone, so if you have been following my channel, you will notice that I have been doing a few reviews on both new and resale developments using our own in-house IPA framework. But today it will be something different because I'll be sharing with you my own purchase journey instead. In this video, I'll explain why I ended up buying an EC as my first property amongst other alternatives and why I have a few small regrets in making this decision. I'll also explain the differences between the 50-50 and a 99-1 ownership structure, as quite a few of you have been asking me about this particular topic. In a subsequent video, I'll be sharing the various options I can consider once my EC obtains MOP later this year and which option my wife and I will likely go for given the pros and cons of each choice. So if you're thinking of getting your first property, or if you're an existing EC or private property owner planning for your next move, do stay tuned for both videos for the complete story and strategy. Alright, let's go. So my wife and I purchased Rivercove Residences EC when it was first launched back in April 2018, but buying an EC was never part of the plan. Like most young couples do, we tried to BTO a few times, 7 times to be exact. All the popular locations that you might be familiar now, like Bidadari, Kallang, Ang Mo Kio, Telok Blangah, you name it, we have tried before. We were in our late 20s then, thinking that we didn't want to continue to wait for a BTO, we decided to explore other options instead. Option 1, go for a resale HDB which is more affordable and we can move in immediately, but we'll be buying a flat that is already a few years into the 99-year lease and we'll also be paying a premium to the first-hand owner. We also have to spend more on renovation given that the existing decor might not be to our liking. Option 2, go for a private property which has no restrictions on the income ceiling or when you are able to sell the house, but we are not too sure whether we are able to afford one. Even if we could, it will likely be a smaller 2-bedroom unit. Or option 3, go for the hybrid which is an EC whereby we could afford a 3-bedroom unit because we'll be buying at a subsidized price that is cheaper than a comparable condo nearby. We also get to save on renovation costs as the flooring, kitchen, bathrooms, wardrobe and aircon are all already provided. However, the location of ECs are usually quite ulu and we also have to serve a 5-year MOP, which are some of the regrets which I'll elaborate later on. Bear in mind, I was still a young officer with the Monetary Authority of Singapore back then and I had very little knowledge about the property market. And you must understand, last time don't have agents do all this content for you, don't have AI to so quickly compare and summarize all the pros and cons of the various options. So we went through the traditional method by googling information online, spoke to our seniors and spoke to other agents for their advice. But the more we researched, the more confused we got because there were just so many differing opinions out there. Ultimately, we realized it boils down to prioritizing which factors are the most important for us. That is, if we deem one factor more important, it means we have to be willing to give up on something else. As a young couple with many years ahead of us, we knew our first house will not be our last home. Therefore, we have always viewed the first property as a stepping stone to our future properties. Hence, capital appreciation is one of our top criteria so that we could reinvest the profits from our first house into a bigger one down the road. This means that the resale HDB option is the least favorable even though it is the most affordable, as we knew it would be hard to make too much of a profit given that we are buying into an asset class that is meant to remain affordable and hence subject to more government intervention. Eventually, given that we had a limited budget to work with, it was between a 2-bedroom condo in a better location versus a 3-bedroom EC in a more outskirt location. There are no right or wrong answers, but we prioritize size over location back then. Even though we know we'll eventually move, but we don't quite know how long we'll be staying in the first property. So we thought it'd be safer to go for a 3-bedroom unit to future-proof things a little bit just in case the family grows. With this train of thought and prioritization exercise, we made the decision to go for the EC and the rest was history. By the way, I hope you have learned something from the video so far and I would really appreciate if you could help me by clicking on the like button and subscribing to my channel. It will really motivate me to continue doing more of such videos. And of course, if you're looking out for your next property and would like to speak to someone that has been there and done that, feel free to contact me on WhatsApp at 94515625 and I'll be happy to explain further. Alright, back to the video. So fast forward 7 years, do I have major regrets making this decision? Well, I can tell you honestly that I would still have made the same decision to go for the EC instead of the HDB or condo. First of all, it helps when you have a few friends in the same development, so we get to hang out, help each other book facilities, pet sit when we are overseas, and etc. Secondly, me and my wife are quite active, so we use the gym, pool and tennis quite often, which we wouldn't get if we went for the HDB. Thirdly, you can't complain much when you are sitting on pretty decent profits as most EC owners do. However, as mentioned at the start, I do have a few small regrets. Number 1, a huge sacrifice we made is to opt for size over location. The EC is in Sengkang, but our parents are in the west and north respectively. So the commute to work, to visit our parents and to everywhere else actually has become a hassle. Number 2, if we had bought a 2-bedroom private condo in 2018, we could have sold it after the 3-year seller stamp duty period and buy a bigger private condo in 2021 and then possibly sell it again in 2024 or 2025. This wouldn't be possible for an EC due to the 5-year MOP which starts from the TOP date. This means that we probably missed out one cycle in between, which also means that we made less profits overall. But this also means that we need to keep going through the hassle of packing, moving and unpacking, or even renting while waiting for the next house. Number 3, which is probably my biggest regret, is that I should have bought a bigger unit back then. And I've heard the same feedback from so many of my clients and homeowners is that they wish they bought a bigger unit back then. It makes sense from an own stay point of view, it makes even more sense from an investment point of view, as a bigger unit will mean greater absolute returns for the same increase in PSF. What stopped us back then from going for a bigger unit was of course the fear of putting all our money in the house, especially when it was our first property. But on hindsight, we have stable earning power and in fact expected to earn more as we progress in our careers. So we could have stretched ourselves a bit more with careful financial planning, of course. While no point crying over spilled milk, I think we made a fairly calculated decision back in 2018 when we have not much experience or knowledge in the property market. So the last thing I wanted to cover in this video, which affects how you position your exit strategy, is the ownership structure. When we bought the house back then, we have structured it in such a way that my wife owns 99% of the house, while sadly I only own 1% of it. Before you report me to IRAS, I need to tell you that this is different from what IRAS is having issue with. The type of cases that IRAS has cracked down on are more accurately described as 100 sell 1 as opposed to the 99 to 1 phrase that is often used by the media. For example, we have Party A with no properties under his name and Party B with an existing property. Instead of purchasing a new house as co-owners from the onset, Party A buys 100% of the property as a first-timer and hence no need to pay any ABSD, after which he will sell 1% of his share to Party B within a very short time frame. In doing so, Party B only needs to pay ABSD on the 1% share instead of ABSD on the full purchase price. Now, this is not allowed, period. With that out of the way, there are legitimate reasons why some couples might prefer to buy their first property under a 50-50 or 99-1 ownership, or in fact any other percentage split right at the onset. And that is alright because it is both their first property and hence they are not subject to ABSD obligations in the first place. But few years down the road, there might be the intention to decouple, and this is where the differing percentage split matters. For your benefit, I have summarized the pros and cons in this table. So for example, if you're looking at this from the buyer's stamp duty point of view, if you have a 50-50 ownership, this will mean that you incur the most BST when you are trying to decouple in the future because you'll be paying stamp duties on the 50% share. On the other hand, if you have a 99-1 ownership, you'll incur the least BST because you're only paying stamp duties on the 1% share. Next, if you are looking at this from a CPF repayment point of view, having a 50-50 ownership will likely mean that the proceeds from decoupling can more than cover the CPF used by the outgoing party, but having a 99-1 ownership will mean that the remaining party will have to repay the outstanding party's CPF plus accrued interest in cash. There are also other factors to consider such as your cash flow planning, loan structure and loan quantum. You can also opt for the in-between percentage such as 70-30 or 80-20, which people seldom talk about. There's also the question whereby who should be the one with the higher percentage. It can get pretty complicated and all this require a more in-depth discussion. But fret not, I have a clear breakdown of the calculations involved for the various scenarios. Feel free to reach out to me at 94515625 and I'll be happy to advise further before you make your property purchase. Looking forward, Rivercove residences will soon obtain MOP in October 2025 and we are already planning for our next move. In the next video, I'll be sharing the pros and cons as well as the financial breakdown of the various options an EC or private property owner can consider once we have met your MOP or cleared your SSD. After all, most of us only have a few chances to make a move on our property in our lifetime. One wrong move can have a very long-lasting negative impact, but the right move will benefit you and your family greatly. So before undertaking this huge decision, feel free to contact me at 94515625 to evaluate the options in order to make a more informed decision. Once again, I'm Sean and I'll see you soon.